This video contains spoilers for One Punch Man. Are we good? Alright, let's roll. Just about anyone who's ever watched, read, or deciphered One Punch Man loves One Punch Man, myself included. That said, with the series' ever-growing popularity, which is sure to blossom in 2048 when Season 2 of the anime finally fucking drops, I'll often hear people make the claim that the series is a deconstruction of Shonen battle manga, which it is, but specifically because it's subverting the trope. The one where every fight is super long, drawn out, and challenging by having Saitama defeat every enemy he faces in one punch. That's the joke, one joke man, believe me, it's very funny every time. Why, just earlier this year, a bad motherfucker named Digibro made a video where he claims that this doesn't mean One Punch Man is subverting shonen tropes, because this kind of joke is pretty common in shonen stories that aren't attempting to deconstruct anything. I would agree with this point if beating everyone in one punch was what made One Punch Man a deconstruction, but it's not! This doesn't make One Punch Man a deconstruction, but this does. The lack of satisfaction Saitama gets out of all of his fights. Maybe I'm reading too much into this, maybe I am insane, but here's a little anecdote for you. I've been dealing with a spot of the old soul-crushing depression for most of my life, and I specifically remember reading One Punch Man for the first time and telling my brother that Saitama, the One Punch Man, is the greatest superhero of all time. At the time, I don't think I would have been able to explain why I felt that way, but I think I understand it better now. In a word, relatability. In a run-on sentence, Saitama is the greatest superhero of all time because he is an otherwise unremarkable, unsatisfied, underappreciated, and depressed man wielding the strongest and most destructive power in the world, and who chooses to do the right thing anyway. There's some obvious commentary on the life and working conditions of your average Japanese citizen in One Punch Man, but I can't claim to know anything about that. Rather than discussion of the explicit social commentary, all I can do is apply my own understanding of depression that I've acquired through living with it and reading about it for 5,000 years to try to interpret the symbols and metaphors contained in this little peach of a story. For starters, I'd like you all to open your textbooks and remind yourselves that One Punch Man is in fact not a shonen manga. It started as a webcomic written and drawn by Mystery Genius 1 before being remade with art by Godhand Yusuke Murata for an online Seinen magazine, Weekly Young Jump, before being republished by Viz Media under the Weekly Shonen Jump name, right alongside My Hero Academia.
I got boxes full of Pepe!
This is the part of the process that I find kind of interesting. In the localization process, Viz apparently decided that they could sell One Punch Man as a shonen series to the English-speaking world. I get it, I really do, it's all there. It's loaded with what I call the this is what it's all about motherfucker moments, and the art style is so purposely evocative of other shonen series, especially Dragon Ball, because this is just fucking Spopovich, dude, that at a glance it's indistinguishable from a shonen manga. But that's kind of the point. Just because the series appeals to people in many of the same ways as the stories that it's deconstructing, it doesn't make it any less of a deconstruction, Digibro! People still enjoy Neon Genesis Evangelion for the robot fights and the cute girls, and don't try to tell me Ava's not a deconstruction again, Kevin! This utterly spot-on shonen reality lays the groundwork for one of the primary ways that One Punch Man explores depression, and that's through contrast. One of the key features of wanting to fucking die syndrome is having a hard time connecting with people and feeling constantly out of place, and you don't have to be a genius to tell that Saitama looks very out of place. Aside from improving readability dramatically, I really think that this is the greatest merit that the remake of the webcomic has, especially in terms of theming. I can't imagine a better person to have drawn this than the world's most talented Dragon Ball fanboy, Yusuke Murata. There was a time when I had beef with how Saitama was drawn like a badass to hype up the shonen anime moments, but I realized that it's actually a stroke of genius because it's usually through the perspective of one of his admirers. I mean, there is this dream sequence in the beginning where he gets to feel like a real hero, but 9 times out of 10 he's just being viewed this way by Genos, Bang, King, Moomin Rider, some villain, or just someone who's suddenly realized how strong he is. That said, he never views himself this way. This is a very hot take, and I think it's a pretty important point, so put a pin in it. I'm just gonna let it float here for a minute while I get another fat point about contrast on the table, specifically about the contrasting goals of a shonen series and the seinen series, and the differences between the perspective of an adult and a child. Thankfully, this contrast can be made incredibly clear by comparisons to The Boy Next Door and My Hero Academia. The MHA anime strutted onto the scene basically right after One Punch Man's anime finished airing, and people were real fast at drawing comparisons, which I think is an easy trap to fall into. Combinations of Western and Eastern interpretations of what defines a superhero placed into an organization where fighting monsters and building a name for yourself nets you money, fame, and a higher rank. Protagonists wielding incredible drive and abilities, but who are initially unappreciated within the broken standards of the organization. Literally characters both called the Hero Hunter with really similar ideals being written at almost the same time. I could go on. I've described One Punch Man as My Hero Academia for grown-ups before, and while I think that's unfair to both series, it's basically what I'm getting at here. I think the title of this video by, IGN unintentionally says more than I ever could. They meant the whole left when the series stopped airing. At least I think they did. I'm not gonna watch a fucking IGN video. But I like the implication that One Punch Man left like a hole in your soul that MHA's enthusiasm and energy was able to mend. Shonen series explore a lot of similar themes, but there's a reason why they tend to work better when the protagonists are children or teenagers. or at least brain damaged enough to behave like them. There's nothing odd about a child exclaiming that he wants to be king of the pirates, but it's fucking weird for an adult. Believe me, I've tried. For an adult, there's an expectation that you'll be kind of disillusioned with life and then you'll just do what's expected of you without making a show of it. In many ways, One Punch Man does it backwards, where everyone in the world is a flashy man-child and Saitama is the only person who's over all of it. For that reason, I'd be more inclined to compare One Punch Man to the Venture Brothers than My Hero Academia. I don't hold on to a lot of physical releases these days, but I actually do keep these two right next to each other on my shelf. I may have a thing for depressed man-children pretending the world is more like a comic book than it is. It's worth looking into. In any case, what makes this world and this character so interesting is that at the end of the day, even though everyone else's struggles carry more weight, have more consequences, the drama's more intense, etc., Saitama is the only character that we can really relate to. He's relatable because he can't relate to anyone because the world he lives in is so far removed from our world. Saitama is the strongest man in the world, but the world is basically a playground and he's the only adult. One Punch Man uses every element of your standard shonen action story to, for one, tell a damn good shonen action story, but what elevates it is that every piece of it serves the point that Saitama is unsatisfied, tired, and can't connect with anyone. When you're depressed, people tell you that the world is a certain way and that certain things should be making you happy, but they just aren't. Everyone wants to be as strong as Saitama except Saitama. What do you mean you're not happy? You're the strongest man in the world. It's especially potent because this is a world that theoretically should be valuing strength above all else, but Saitama goes largely unappreciated by society. I realize I just spent a long time making the point that Saitama is the grown-up and everyone else is the child, but it can also be viewed the opposite way, where Saitama's simplistic and heroic ideals can seem childish in the face of a meaningless bureaucracy. That's a little bit more in line with the dynamic of a traditional shonen story, but it still serves to make Saitama out of place in this world. Like I said, it works as both a deconstruction and not, but it all still serves to make Saitama a fucking professional sad boy. It can seem like Saitama does get satisfaction from hanging out with his friends, the people who actually appreciate his strength, and he does, but again, there's a barrier here. And in points past where the anime ends, we receive greater indication that Saitama doesn't feel all that great of a connection with these people, even though they are truly pure of soul. He can find people who do appreciate his company and his thoughts and talents, but he's unable to appreciate them in himself. Saitama was basically suicidal before he became the strongest man in the world, and it's possible that he's returned to that state of mind. This is kind of a dark thought, but you could view Saitama's hero work as a metaphor for the decision to keep living and working even though he may want to kill himself. I'm not saying that's exactly what one was going for, but at the very least he's continuing to do something he finds no meaning in because he understands that it's the right thing to do. In the case of suicide, it would be living for the people you care about, and in Saitama's case, it would be fighting for the people who need to be protected. Sure, you may not want to, but what are you gonna do? Just let that kid die? In the face of rejection, he'll claim that it's just a hobby and he does it for himself, but it's quite clear that he's living and fighting for the good of other people and not for what makes him happy. I still feel that Saitama is my favorite superhero of all time, and here's why. While other heroes face danger at great personal risk, they're ultimately able to appreciate the feeling of having overcome a challenge. Saitama does the right thing just and only because it's the right thing. One Punch Man doesn't exactly have a lesson that you can write down on paper. The series throws down all sorts of shonen manga morals, but in kind of the same way that an adult might feed a child a moral that they know to be true but doesn't necessarily inform their own actions. Saitama knows that improving yourself is important and that heroes should be willing to help people even if they don't have a shot at winning, but he doesn't feel it. Genos feels it, Bong feels it, but Saitama knows it. He's depressed but motivated, and he'll continue improving himself and saving people and doing the right thing even if nobody likes him except his friends. He'll do it because he has to, holding out hope that hey, maybe next time things will be a little bit better. Things will technically, numerically improve for Saitama. He'll rise in the ranks and the law of shonen power creep dictates that he'll fight stronger and stronger opponents, and people will begin to appreciate it. But as far as we've seen, he'll never be truly satisfied with being a hero. Sure, the Sea King sucked, Boros sucked, Garo sucked, but maybe the next one, you know? In the meantime, he'll forge connections with his friends as they begin to understand him better and he begins to better understand them, and he'll take whatever satisfaction he gets in that to keep moving. Maybe one day he'll get that fight he's looking for, but I really don't know if he will. That's what keeps him going, and that's what keeps me reading. This has been your main man Steak. Eat your veggies. Thanks for watching.